Michelle. So thank you, Junior and Marcus, Gunther and Rene for joining us today. This should be a fascinating session. I've not been to Neusiedlersee, but I have had a fascinating experience of tasting the Zweigelts following the Austrian trade tasting in London, the last one before lockdown. And I was really impressed. So I think we're in for a treat today. Junior, who's leading this session, is very well qualified to do so. Intriguing background, and he comes from Brazil and is the country's first master of wine. But he initially studied forest engineering and law, then moved into wine after he came to the UK in 1989. And now he's had close to 30 years experience in the wine world. He's a consultant, author, judge, and a great fan of Neusiedlersee and of the Zwiegelt grape. So Junior, over to you. Thank you very much. Oh, and thank you also to Spritz for setting this up. Without the efforts of Astrid and her colleagues, we wouldn't be here today. So over to you, Junior. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and good morning. So it's, as Liz said, thanks for the great welcome, and also I welcome some of the producers with us. So to make this session a little bit more dynamic, so we'll try to keep it within an hour. And my job really is to transport you guys from London, from the UK to Vienna, which is it's about 767 miles. Less so for Michelle or the people who may be near Austria. But then we'll talk about a little bit about the climate, about the soil, about the grape varieties, and I'll introduce you to 6 wines, some of which with the help of the producer. So in terms of, there's a question here now. Can you guys hear me well, yeah?
Yep. Yes.
So here we're in Austria. Just to give you an idea, on the top left of your map, it's the country is landlocked. You know, most of you have been there. Those who haven't, maybe we'll have to correct that pretty soon. But it's surrounded by 8 countries. Just to give you an idea, is between latitudes 46 and 49, which equates to similar latitudes of Burgundy. On the bottom left, you see the whole country of Vienna. It's 84,000 kilometers square. Just to give you an idea, that's about 1/3 of the area of the UK. So just to give you an idea of how small the country is. But it is the land of clever people. I was reading something not long ago, and Austria is number 7th on the list of the Nobel Prize winners. So it's land a lot of clever people there. But then we get on the right side of the map. That's where we are. It's about 50 kilometers east of Vienna towards the border with Czech Republic and Hungary. Burgenland, and specifically to the region of Neusiedlersee. You see that the region is dominated by the lake, and I will talk about the lake. We'll talk about the lake in a second, and its impact on the wines and the style of the wines and so on and so forth. But the region, just to give you an idea, is about 60 kilometers from north to south, and about 30 kilometers from east to west. So in terms of climate, really is on the crossroads of 4 different systems. I'm not going to read everything that's in your slides. I'm going to share this presentation. We're going to share this presentation with you afterwards so you can read it. But just to give you an idea, in my view, is a crossroad between 4 different systems. So you have the cool winds from the north, you have Atlantic influence from the west, you have continental influence from the east, and you have the Baltic, the Mediterranean influence from the south. So it's quite an unusual climatic system, let's say. There's a lot of sunshine there. It's about over 2,000 hours of sunshine, with 300 days of sunshine, which make us particularly jealous, those of us who live in the UK. And there is very little rain. Textbooks will tell you it's 600 millimeters of rain every year. The last time when I went there and I mentioned this to producers, oh, the textbooks tells you that 600, they all laugh. And they start showing me the most recent rainfall, and it's quite significant lower than 600. So the textbook tells you 600 is in recent years been less than that. The other thing that is interesting to see is it's quite a windy area. A lot of the wind comes from the northwest. So 70% of the winds come from the northwest. So you see a lot of sunshine and a lot of wind, and which equates, if we all know a little bit about viticulture, very little disease. The area itself is quite blessed in that respect. And here is, for those of you who haven't been there yet and would like to come, it's a beautiful, absolutely beautiful area. The lake itself is enormous. It's 315 kilometers square. Difficult for you to picture that, but if you can picture one football pitch and then multiply that by 58,865. So it's 58,865 football pitches you can fit on the lake. It's enormous. And what it does, it regulates the temperature. The temperatures there in the summer can be really hot, 35, if not higher, during the day. And in the evening, it goes down to 20 degrees, and that's helped by the lake. And I'll talk a bit about the lake and also about the smaller lakes that surround the main lake. But as you can imagine, there's also the lake impact in terms of humidity. And just by looking at these pictures, you can tell it is a gorgeous area. It's been a UNESCO site since 2001, with special interest to viticulture, alongside Douro, alongside Piemonte, which has got this lovely screen, and alongside Bordeaux. So it is a beautiful area. And you see here, you saw the main lake, and you see also there's a lot of small, we call it shallow lakes. In fact, last summer when I went there, they had evaporated. There were no shallow lakes because they are really shallow, 20, 30 centimeters. And with lack of rainfall in a very hot summer, that means there was no, they weren't there. But you can see here, aside from viticulture, it's an area which has an immense diversity. For those of you who love birds, there's over 350 species of birds over there. Lots of deers. You can see here some water buffaloes. And this is all in this beautiful park of Neusiedlersee. In terms of, just to give you some stats, some figures, you see here on the top left, all the areas of Austria. I mean, we all associate Austria with white wines, Gruner and Riesling especially. But you can see here, Burgenland, it's dominated by red wines. And within Burgenland, we're talking about Neusiedlersee, which all the areas in Burgenland are focused on red wines. In Neusiedlersee, it's sort of 50-50. You can see right on the bottom, right on the top right hand side, you see the red wines account for 49% and white wines for 51% in terms of plantings. Within the red wines, we talk about the diversity, and this is what we're here. We're here to talk about the diversity of the region. So we're gonna taste some whites, we're gonna taste some reds, there are some rosés, there are some sparkling wines, but the focus really is Zweigelt. Zweigelt is the most planted red variety. You can see at the bottom of the slide, 24% of the plantings. And you also find the Blaufränkisch, St. Laurent, Cabernet, Merlot, Syrah, and many other things. But the focus really here in this area really is Zweigelt. And I didn't mention, and we're going to taste one wine later, which is a sweet wine, which I think that area, because of the lake, because of the humidity, because of a lot of sunshine, is blessed by making some of the most wonderful sweet wines in the world. Those are the guys. You can see all the young guys there. They are we're going to be tasting the wines from, and including Gunther, who was with us, and Rene, who was with us, and Marcus also is going to be talking about his wines. Just to give you an idea in terms of the area, there are around 489 small wineries. And I'm going to ask Gunther now to speak a little bit about wine, to put white wine in perspective, and then I'll taste the first wine, and then Gunther will take us to the second white wine. Gunther, over to you.
Okay, so hello from Austria. I just want to give you a comparison, which is quite interesting. Junior said before that we are in a similar haze than Burgundy. I stressed here that the distance between Meursault and the Neusiedlersee region, it's 910 kilometers, and there are just Switzerland and the Alps from Austria in between. So what makes our wines so special, our white wines, and especially the white Burgundies? We get a lot of fruit from ripeness. And on the other hand side, we get minerality from these salt and soda basins. And this is really interesting. You get the salt spread by the winds, which we have very strong there. And for us, it's the point to reach a balanced acidity due to the lakes and the special microclimate. Yeah, and the wind again is for our white wines very important as well for the red wine. We have a cool permanent northwest wind. And what you see on the right-hand side, it's a very interesting and specific thing for our region. We have a lot of windmills, and I've written here CO2 neutral frost guardians. These huge electricity producing windmills can give us between 3 and 5 degrees in spring, which is protecting us from late frost. And so in some of our regions, this helps us a lot. On the volume, we have around 474 hectare Chardonnay, 270 hectare white Burgundy, and so Pinot Blanc, and 58 hectares Grey Burgundy, which is the biggest area of Grey Burgundy in Austria. In total, we have in Austria only 90 hectares of Grey Burgundy, Pinot Gris. So I hand over to Junior again.
You will not speak. There is one more. Hang on. I thought there was one more slide. Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. We'll carry on. So thank you, Gunther, about putting white wine in perspective. I've also seen the apart from the Burgundian varieties and the Gruner, which Gunther spoke about. I think there are bits and pieces. There's some Sauvignon Blanc I've tasted. There's some Muscat and some delicious sparkling wines made out of Muscat. So there's a lot of different wines there. Maybe I don't know if any of our guest speakers also may have something else planted, but there is no shortage of diversity in terms of white variety. So let's invite all of you guys for your first wine, which is a Chardonnay from Alaja vineyard, and I'll tell you a little bit about Alaja. I think most of you, well, hopefully, when you guys get to the region, you'll be coming with us, and usually this is the starting point of the trip, because it's a beautiful winery, but it's not only that. There's the viewpoint there. You can see virtually the whole of the area from the platform there, and you can see the lake. So it's a really good place to start the visit. This vineyard's been there. This winery's been there. The new winery, as you can see, is quite new. I think it was built in 2018, so it's pretty modern. The estate itself was established in the 1900s, and is run by Michael Alaja on your left-hand side. I think it's not a small winery, it's not a huge winery. They have about 52 hectares, and this wine specifically, this Chardonnay, comes from not far from the vineyard, from this winery. The vineyards here are about 20 years old in clay soils, in some sandy soils, and all hand harvested. As after the harvest, the wine comes into the winery, is sorted by hand, goes into a stainless steel. Fairly low yield here. We're talking about 50 hectoliters per hectare, and from stainless steel, the wine finishes the fermentation in barrique, where it spends 12 months in new French oak. So this is, you guys taste it. If anyone has a question or a comment, please do so. Really typical Chardonnay with lovely, rich yellow fruits, obviously oaked, lots of sweet spices from the oak. Overall, well balanced. It's got 5.6 grams of acidity there, and in terms of alcohol, again, it's 13.5. So it's the alcohol is there, but in harmony. Great wine with the chicken, with mushroom dishes, with cheeses, with all sorts of things. So anything, just treat as a normal, as you would any normal slightly oaked or oaked Chardonnay. And I think it's a good example of what Austria is capable of. Carry on from there. I'll leave you some of the quotes for you guys to have a look. Carry on from there. I invite Gunther to talk about his Pinot Gris. Please, Gunther.
Can you go back with the PowerPoint? So,
sure.
Okay. No. The Allacher page, because I'm the second on the Allacher page.
Yeah.
Okay. So, thank you. The second wine you have in your glass is a Pinot Gris, and I will tell you a little bit about our story. The family vineyard Stadler is owned by the Stadler family, and our families are friends since 40 years. So my father and Tom's father have been friends since that. And in 2019, Tom and myself decided to do noble wines for the world, not more, not else. And with our 2019, we started with a brand new methodology to produce the wine. It's very handcrafted, very Burgundy. I will tell you more later. And the 2019 Pinot Gris, we came on the market in 2021. And last year, we immediately received 95 decanter points with the first Pinot Gris we produced in that way. What you have in your glass is the 2020 harvest. I can tell you it's 13.5% alcohol, 3.4 grams in sugar, 5 grams per liter tartaric acid. And it's a single vineyard. It's Ried-Lehendorf. It's also clay, sand, and we are doing here a maximum of 3,500 to 4,000 liter per hectare volume. The vineyard from this wine is 30 years old. We do 1 to 2 grape selections in the vineyard before harvest. And then we put it in 12 months in oak barrels. And it's 500 liter oak barrels. We do pardonnage, full malolactic fermentation. Yeah, and that is what you have in your glass. And you can, it's already listed together with our Cabernet Franc at Hedonism in UK, Propeller, and in Canada, I'm with the LCBO. So it was a big success for the first wine out of our new way to produce it. And some of you, Robert had the chance to see our small winery. We have a winery in the winery to produce this fine Burgundy style wine.
Excellent. Thank you, Gunther. Thank you for sharing your wine. It's a lovely wine. And yeah, we'll move on now to, you also, before that, Gunther also makes a really lovely Zweigelt and really a great example of Cabernet Franc. I mean, Cabernet Franc, I like Cabernet Franc. Sometimes when it's underripe, it's dreadful and vegetal. And when the underripe is vegetal and horrendous. When it's overripe, it loses definition. Cabernet Franc has to be picked at the right time. And I think the lack of there's no lack of sunshine in this area. So, and as long as the grapes are picked properly, and Gunter and his team, they do that. So if you have a chance to taste his Cabernet Franc, is a really good example of Cabernet Franc.
Junior, can I just interrupt very quickly?
Go for it.
Because I promised to ask Gunter a question. I was with some Master of Wine students in Burgundy a couple of weeks ago, amongst whom was a mutual friend of ours, Manuela Prieth. And we were talking about frost control. And apparently Gunter has said that wind turbines, so wind turbines to generate electricity, there is some evidence that wind turbines help moderate frost risk. I'd be really interested if you could comment on that a little bit further. I realize time is of the essence here.
That's fine. Gunter, would you like to elaborate on that? We lost Gunter.
I think you need to unmute yourself, Gunter. Because you're muted.
Yeah, I'm back now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So what I can tell is that we have really huge windmill parks around our areas in the north. And what we understood is that the cold air, which is normally close to the ground, is mixed up with the air above. So it's like a turbulence. And so you are mixing you're bringing the cold up and mix it with the warmer air on the top, and this turbulence gives us this 3 to 5 degrees. It's depending where it is, but this is what we learned on Kaiserberg, which is very close to the winery from René as well. But we understood this helps us with the late frost. I cannot tell you more. It's just experience that the temperature problem is not so big since we have these windmills.
Okay, many thanks. I think that's fascinating. And I would have thought that for other wine producing regions, that could be really useful information. So thank you very much.
Richard, I'll elaborate a little bit on that. Is the first time I went to Austria, I was landing. Now, the first time, one of the times, because I've been to Austria many times, but one of the times I was landing. The first time I was landing in the evening, and as the plane was landing, I was seeing all those red lights flashing.
How did you do?
All over. And I said,
Did
"What?
you get it done?"
So somebody is.
Okay, this is not me trying to be cruel.
Sorry, we got somebody. Could you all mute yourselves, please? Can you? I don't know who's talking, but can you?
It's Patricia.
I think it's
Oh,
Patricia.
okay. Hang on a sec.
Let's, for argument's sake.
Patricia, I can't see Patricia on the thing. Rosemary. Yeah.
It's okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. We'll be patient. No problem.
Okay.
Okay. Shall we carry on?
Yeah,
Great.
please
No,
do.
as I was saying, as the plane came to land, and there was a sea of red lights flashing. I said, "What on earth is that?" And then, as the plane landed afterwards, we're going towards the region. And it was nighttime, and then I saw there was on top of the oldest wind machines there's a red light for security reasons. So what I'm trying to say, there's not one, there's not two, it's millions of them all over. For those of you who don't know, the rivers in Austria produce 66% of their electricity. So they're quite, they have a lot of, apart from that and wind, it's probably one of the greener countries in Europe. And also they recycle 67% of their waste. So we have a little bit to learn from the Austrian in that respect. But in terms of the specific question of Richard, it's but one thing, it is natural. It is a very, very windy region. So it's especially in the north part of the region of the Neusiedlersee, you see a lot of those machines. So it's a blessing, to be honest, to have those machines, to have the wind coming from the northwest, and also those machines to as Gunter said, to spread the cold wind. So and to mix it up so the frost is minimized. Now, I hope that's answered, and we'll move on into the red varieties. And Marcus is going to help me a little bit on tasting his red wines to start with. But before that, I want to talk about Zweigelt. And Zweigelt is a crossing between St. Laurent and Blaufränkisch. St. Laurent, I'm not going to read what is in your screen. You can read it later, or you're going to receive this presentation. But I like St. Laurent very much. It's a wonderful variety. It's very light. It's very fruit forward. It's got lovely texture, lovely tannins. And a lot of people who taste St. Laurent also like it. So why isn't they? But there is only 596 hectares planted. And I think, why isn't it St. Laurent planted more widely? Well, the answer is, it's in my view, is very, very labor intensive, this varieties, and also it has the yield is quite variable. It's never as reliable as Zweigelt. So labor intensive, variable yields, and you need to achieve high quality with St. Laurent. You need to really bring your crop down to about 4-5 tons. So economically, it's not that interesting. Blaufränkisch, on the other hand, it's a great variety. The wines are wonderful, and they have amazing longevity. And aside from what's written in your slide, it's very hardy. It's a hardy variety. It's very frost resistant, and it likes very much sunny sites. And the last time I look in terms of plantings, they are standing at 2,600 hectares of St. Laurent. And then you got Zweigelt. Zweigelt is by far the most popular, by far the most planted. And the reasons for that, it's the opposite of St. Laurent. It's very, very high, or it can be high yielding. It adapts very well in many different types of soils. You can give it many different styles of wine depending when you pick. So the picking window of Zweigelt is quite long. You can pick it between Pinot Noir and Merlot. It could take almost 3 weeks. And if you pick it slightly earlier, you have freshness and more vibrancy. You can pick late, so it's like a high alcohol, different fruit profile. But I said it is high yielding. But if you really want to make high quality wines, some of the wines you're going to be tasting today, you really have to bring your yields down to 6, 7, 8 tons per hectare. As it stands today, there are 6,129 hectares of Zweigelt planted in Austria. In terms of a timeline, it is a crossing, as I said, between St. Laurent and Blaufränkisch, established in 1922. And up to 1950s, they were mostly experimental vineyards. In 1956, there was a huge frost, and Zweigelt, it wasn't known as Zweigelt at the time, it was known as Cross 71. And it did very, very well resisting frost in 1956. And in 1960s, when Lenz Moser started changing the viticultural habits from the vines trained on post to VSP, they observed that aside from being frost resistant, the wines have increased vastly in quality, and also they were able to get really good yields out of it. So on the back of that, you can see here on the top right-hand side how Zweigelt grew from 770 in the early 70s to 2,292 hectares in the late 70s. Within 1 decade, the Zweigelt plantings increased significantly. In 1990, Zweigelt became the #1 red variety in percentage of red wine in terms of red wine areas. And in 2012, this was when the Neusiedlersee received its DAC classification. I mentioned earlier, we all still speak and all think about Austria as white wine country, and it's rightly so. You can see on your slide, 67% is white wine as opposed to 33% being red. But you can see here, one stat, well, I just remember now, it's in the 60s, red wine accounted for only 9% of the plantings. And just 20 years later, the plantings had doubled. So the real boom was that in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s of red wines. But throughout this development, you can see Zweigelt. If you look at 3 years ago, or if you look at 30 years ago, Zweigelt has always been one of the top 3 planted varieties in Austria. He accounts today of 13.8% of total plantings in Austria. And if you talk about only specifically about red wines, it accounts for 42%, 42.3% of the plantings. Just one more point is, Riesling has its place in Austria. Gruner has its amazing places in Austria, and sometimes a mistake especially if we are journalists, most of us in this tasting. But for buyers, I see mistakes made sometimes when they decide to buy Gruner from a great Gruner producer, and then to make their life easier, they buy the Riesling from the same guy, and then they buy the Blaufränkisch and even the Zweigelt from the same guys. Because usually what Zweigelt is great, Riesling is not, and vice versa. So if you really are a quality conscious, you want to make the best out of your range, you should be buying obviously buying the wines from where they grow best, where they do best. In Zweigelt, I think its homeland is definitely Neusiedlersee. Now, moving on, I invite Marcus. Hello, Marcus. Can you talk about your first Zweigelt?
Hi. Can I just make a quick interruption, Junior? There are a couple of questions in the chat. I don't know whether these you'd like to address these before.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
As I'm monitoring the chat here, the first is actually from Beverly Blanning. It says, Marcus, that is interesting, but is it possible to turn them on? I think we're talking about the wind turbines that are used specifically for frost protection.
Yeah, I think it will not work because they have no engine. So they only can produce when there is wind.
Okay.
So it can't be used in that way.
I see.
Okay. And another question from Beverly Blanning, are Zweigelt plantings still increasing?
Yes, winemakers are still planting Zweigelt in our region for everything. You can use Zweigelt for everything. We have one producer who's making sparkling wine out of it. We have some producers making sweet wine, and the most wines are reds for classic or reserve style. Still planting Zweigelt.
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
Thanks, Marcus. I think this slide here more or less answered the question. 30 years ago, Zweigelt was number 2. 3 years ago, still within the top 3. So it's being planted. It's the figures are up. Marcus, and I think Marcus just touched upon Zweigelt Classic and Zweigelt Reserve. Maybe you can talk about the difference between Classic and Reserve, Marcus.
Yeah, the Classic will be a very nice, easy drinking, fruit forward wine.
It's a wine.
Well, no. I'll tell you later.
Who's it?
Wendy French. I've taken myself off. No.
Sorry about that. Can you please put your microphones on mute?
Right.
Thank you.
Classic Neusiedlersee DSC Zweigelt is always fruit forward, easy drinking style. It depends on the winemaker and on the soil. You have sometimes more full-bodied, you have sometimes lighter, fresher wines. If we are closer to the lake, my winery is the closest to the lake, and we are more fresher and lighter and fruit forward. And if you go away a little bit from the lake, like Mönchhof, especially where René is, they have more gravel and iron in the soil. You have more powerful structured wines. So there's not so much in between these two villages, but the soil is different because the lake was 2 times bigger 100 years ago. And so in Podersdorf, where I'm located, the wines are sitting in the old soil of the lake, so very sandy loam, and also the salt ponds, which Günther were talking before. And with Zweigelt, it's also in bad years a good thing, because it's no problem if you harvest it early, as we heard before at Cabernet Franc. When you don't get the time where you have to harvest, then it tastes green if you harvest it early. And at bad years, you have more. If you have more cool weather, rainy weather, and you have to harvest it, it's no problem, because it's still fruity. You have no green flavors. It's a little bit fresher, but that's no problem for the classic style. And the winemakers can handle it perfectly with bleeding some juice to get more structure in the wines. In the last years now, we're trying a little bit more with whole bunch to get more structure, more freshness in it. And I think our winemakers in the region like to experiment a little bit. Junior, some else?
No, I think you sum up very well, Marcus. It's in that respect, because sometimes Zweigelt for me reminds me, it can be like a Mencia or a Pinot or something really light.
We spoke about Malbec, especially, maybe with
Yeah,
the
that
early
was,
harvest, late harvest. It doesn't matter.
No, in terms of style, it goes on very, very light, really heavy and dense and powerful and complex. It can be like a top, like an Italian or a Rhone wine, lots of sunshine. But in terms of the variety itself, it's exactly as I agree with you. Exactly what I was going to say. It has the malleability of Malbec, because if you're talking about Cabernet Sauvignon, for example, if you pick early with the pyrazine, with the green flavors, you would know about it. And Cabernet Franc, the same thing. But with Malbec, and in the same case with Zweigelt, I think this is what I mentioned earlier. The picking window is quite long, and that's one of the great things about Zweigelt. This wine specifically, Marcus, do you want to say anything about your wine specifically?
It's 90% produced in steel tank, 10% from used oak barrels. Fruit-driven vintage. 20 is very nice vintage, nice quality. It's our easiest Zweigelt, easy drinking, fruit forward. You can also drink it a little bit chilled in summer, and it's perfect matching with food.
When we're talking about yield here, for example, give us an idea of the yield
the yield. Here we're around 70 hectoliters per hectare, around between 6 and 7, 70, 60 and 70.
Good.
Around, and 2 weeks on the skins, bleeded 10% of juice to give a little bit more complexity and more color, more structure, and then stored for 16 months in steel tank and bottled last summer.
Good. Excellent. Thank you very much, Marcus. If anyone has any more questions for Marcus, feel free to ask, or we can ask them later on. Time is going on, so we'll move on to the fourth wine, which is a wine from Franz Schneider. It's a family run. I think it is the smallest producer that I know, one of the smallest producers I know in the region. Certainly from our group of producers here, is only 7 hectares. And so everything that is done there is done by Franz, who he was working in a different industry before and decided to change to winemaking. He, after completing his studies, he went to work in Piemonte with Sandrone, went to work in South Africa and so on. So he got good experience and came back and is running his state basically all by himself. I mean, you see pictures of him pruning, and he does everything. And he makes very light, very elegant style of wine. This is a 2018, which is a really dry, really warm vintage, perfect harvest time according to France. The soils here are gravel in the village of Harpton, where he's located, with really good drainage. The vines are quite old here. They're about 50 years old. Hand-picked. After that, it goes into a really large vat. That everything it does its pigeage by hand in large vats. And one thing it does here, aside from cutting the yields to about 50 hectoliters per hectare, he does 25% saignée to get more concentration, more color, and more of everything. And this wine spent 23 months in oak, but very old used barrels, and also some large tonneaus where they age. And that's it. The malolactic happens in those barrels, and you got what you got in your glass. So hope you enjoy it. But really intense, lovely cherries, plums, some slightly blackcurranty notes. And here, for those of you who want two wines, I mean, Marcus wine and this wine from France, they are archetypal examples of Zweigel. And I like Zweigel for this lovely texture. And I think somebody mentioned earlier, it's aside from being quite malleable in the winery, it's very malleable in terms of your fridge. So I like to serve my Zweigel really cold, colder than normal. That I would serve any red wine. You can take it because there's so little tannins, and then warm it up as it goes. You see how the wine changes. And it doesn't get green and tannic and grapey. It can take a little bit of slightly more chilled than I would other wines. In that respect, is quite versatile. I think that's it. Talking about versatility, I think it's important to talk about food. As I said, serve it cold. Don't mess, just very informally with pizza, with pasta. It's great. We've done some amazing fine dining experiences in London recently, and it's great in that environment also. So from a very informal to a very formal. We talked about low tannins, so great with spicy food, Indian food, Mexican food. It goes even well with slightly meaty fish. I've tried that. It's great. White meat, veal, beef, roast beef, everything. It's a really versatile, great variety. This you guys can read on your own. And I'm gonna go back to René and ask him to talk about two things, René. Before we talk about your wines, I'd like you to speak about longevity and the ability of Zweigel to age, because they can make really light wines, as we suggested, but also when you really cut the yields and you concentrate the wine. I've tasted Zweigel they are 2 decades old, and they're still holding on wonderfully. So I'd like you to have your experience of Zweigel and ageability, please.
Yeah, I do think Zweigel has a great ageability. You have to work just, a little bit different. We do not, it's not necessary to crop thinning. You just have to, dry stress that the vines just put less water into the berries, so you got a very good concentration. And because of its early ripening state, we'd like to extract as much as possible of the tannins. They probably seem in the youth quite rough, but experience showed us that during aging in the bottle, after 10 years, the tannins are going to soften up perfectly. They are really getting, you know, licorice, soft, smooth, while, by example, a Cabernet Sauvignon, which is bitter or harsh in the youth, will stay bitter and harsh for 50 or longer years. So I do think that Zweigelt also has this richness that produce wines that can age gracefully. With our Admiral, by the way, it has nothing to do with, you know, ship driving. Admiral is a butterfly in our vineyards, and it is always about 2/3 of Zweigelt. And as I said, we try just to get out the concentration, the good ripe tannins out of the Zweigelt, and just give a little bit of twist with the Merlot, which is more soft, and the Cabernet Sauvignon to add some spiciness. The wine was always also 100% new oak, and I do think it swallowed quite completely. Even in terms of weather change, I do think that Zweigelt suits the new conditions perfectly, while probably other varieties struggling to keep their identity. It's no problem with warmer temperatures with the Zweigelt. It's got probably a higher concentration, but I do think the aroma profile, the softness, the blushness is still there. And the question of increasing Zweigelt plantings, of course, I do think we are just at the beginning to conquer, let's say so, the world market. We export quite a lot of Zweigelt. We have in our winery about 60% of Zweigelt to the Chinese market, and of course it dropped a little bit or dramatically during COVID crisis. But I do think there's a big potential worldwide with this, let's say, new variety, and yeah, I do think it has a bright future.
I think one of the things that is I just when I was listening to Rene, and one of the things that he said in terms of conquering the international markets, and I look at the stats of the Austrian wine marketing board, and I was like, wow, is this really how it is? Because we all associate Austria with white wine, as I mentioned earlier, but what I didn't know until recently is that red wines account for 1/3 of the exports. And that for me, that was quite surprising. So the red wines really, they export quite a lot of red wines. Rene, I had the privilege of tasting Admiral. We're talking about 2019 today, but and we talk about longevity. During the Austrian Wine Marketing Board, I did one of the master classes I was privileged to do, and I had one of your wines, and it was a 2011. And I tell you, it didn't show any signs of age at all. So it's a wine that is so vibrant, still so young. The tannins are lovely and round and soft, but the fruit profile is still so youthful. So I can attest to that, even using this wine as a comparison today. But one of the things that I'd like you to maybe speak a little bit more is about your concentration, your way of concentrating, they're making small berries. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, first of all, I just have to add as well that, you know, when you look at the market or the wine critics in the German-speaking Europe, it is the most successful blend. You know, Zweigelt blends got the highest points, and in terms of quantity, it's quite a lot. We have, yeah, a very good market, and unfortunately, we can sell more or less everything in a year. So we'd like to increase the amount of the production to keep a little bit back, put on stock, and put probably after 10 years or when the wine is more softer, put it back on the market. So this is, you know, something for the future. And yes, we personally in our winery have a unique system to create more concentration. As you know, tight plantings from Burgundy or Bordeaux within, you know, a square meter. We have this system where we plant 2 wines close together. Each is just, you know, 2 centimeters away from the other one, and they compete for nutrients, for water from the very first moment. So they really have to put their roots quite deep down. And so I do think with this system you get small berries, because, you know, their vigorousness is really low. You got a kind of bonsai growing, and during, you know, the climate change, you know, water is get more restricted. I do not have these big problems with water stress that, you know, that the wines can probably could die. But we really could go down to 18 hectoliters per hectare by the Zweigel. Not within the crop thinning, just because we have so small berries.
Wow. So this wine specific, because I remember when I tasted the 2011, and I remember it's been a month ago, but I still remember the yield because they were very low. At the time, it was 36 hectoliters per hectare on the 2011. What about this one? What sort of yield are we talking about?
Yeah, 2019 was a really good year. Very, you know, we have not to do a lot. It was quite chilling. We got good rain, we got good heat, and we talk about, you know, maximum 25 hectoliters per hectare by all the varieties.
Wow. It is very, very low.
Yeah, but it's, you know, not labor intensive to work this way. So it's still, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, with between planting vines, one thing, between planting vines side by side, virtually side by side, and a lot of green cover also, that you also do that, don't you?
Yeah, just a little bit, but it's not the main goal. You know, the wine have to get in balance by itself. Yeah, in the youth, you have to go when they are quite young. And unfortunately, we started the planting reds end of the 80s, beginning of 90s. So our wine's still, let's say, young, and we are still planting Zweigel. We're preparing this year 1 hectare Zweigel new. And so let's see how the wines, when they are really old, so let's say about 60 years, how great the wines will be then.
Thank you very much, René. Thanks for sharing your wine. And then we move on. We have 5 minutes. I wanted really to keep you to your 1 hour slots, so you guys can carry on with your Monday. I'm not sure if your Monday is going to get any better than this, but this is our last wine. Let me just bring the slide here. We're talking about sweet wines from this region, and this is a new legislation that was brought out recently, and there are two types of sweet wines here. They are on a Neusiedlersee DAC reserve, or the Neusiedlersee DAC, which is the fruity sweet, which more or less equates to Auslese or Spätlese. Or you have a noble sweet, which is, we're talking about Beerenauslese or Trockenbeerenauslese. And this is a wonderful example of wines from Johannes. He took over the winery recently. Well, not recently, but he took over when he was very young. He was 23 years old, and he's been doing that for almost 2 years, 20 years now. But it's his father, he's third generation. His father still overlooking, helping him. They have about 34 hectares planted. And one of the things when you visit his vineyards, they are very near those shallow lakes, and that would create this humidity and which is great for botrytis. So you got a little bit of fog, a little humidity in the morning, and you have a lot of sunshine in the afternoon, and you get botrytis, but you have very clean botrytis. I think you can just smell it. I think you know what I'm talking about. So that the gray, a little bit fungal, when you have really well-defined botrytis. And this is what this area is so good for. The wines are wonderful. There's lovely notes of pineapple and apricot and peach. This is a blend of Welsh Riesling mostly, about 50% Welsh Riesling, and it has a Shore River and also a little bit, I think 10% of Grüne Veltliner. And the wines are very simply, they are hand harvested, very low yield again, 30 hectares per hectare. It goes into stainless steel, and that's it. Fermentation stainless steel for 9 months. It cleans off, so there's no lees, and it's very simply made. Just go to press, whole bunch press into stainless steel, clean up, leave it there for 9 months in the bottles. And the wines are just as you see, lovely vibrancy of fruits. Amazing concentration, very sweet. Just to give you an idea, this has 161 grams of sugar, and the acid here is about 8 grams of tartaric. That's decent balance, and it is really a good example of sweet wine from our area. So that was it. That was what we wanted to do. We wanted to transport you to here all the producers who grace us with their presence, and I wanted to transport you to Vienna, and then talk about the climate, talk about the soil, talk about the grape varieties, focus a little bit on Zweigels, and we have the privilege to have the producers to also share their knowledge with us. And that's it. Finish with a lovely sweet wine, and before 11 o'clock, which was my goal for today. So now we're here. Gunther, Renee, Marcus, and myself. So if you have any more questions.
Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. There are a couple of questions still on the chat, one from Beverly and one from Justin. Beverly was wondering, are the new Zweigelt plantings replacing sorry, that's just disappeared. Okay, are the new Zweigelt plantings replacing the lesser suitable varieties, and if so, which ones? Or is this new land previously unplanted?
May I answer this question?
Go for it, Renee.
When you go back 100 years ago, it was quite prominent to have a lot of white wine. So 100 years ago, it was about 90% or 80% white wine and only 20% red. So it changed during the 80s dramatically, and it's still common. I mean, from my example, we still put out some Grüne Veltliner where we plant red grapes then, and yeah, it's going probably more and more to red wine in our area. So we probably will have 70% in about 30 years of red wine, but it's still Grüne Veltliner, Riesling, and such wines which will sell people by the bulk.
Thank you very much, Renee. The question from Justin, I think, was relevant to wine number 5. So what are the respective ratios of the 3 varieties in this wine?
In this particular vintage, it's about 60% Zweigelt, 20 Cabernet, and 20 Merlot. It's always around 2/3, more or less, Zweigelt. Zweigelt is or should be the main variety, and probably, yeah, in future it will goes up to 80% probably.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this is exactly the same ratio, Renee, of the 2011 I tasted a month ago. So
yeah.
Well, thank you all very much. I'm going to leave it to Liz now to wind up the session, but thank you from me and for everybody for attending this morning.
There are no further questions. Thank you so much. That was absolutely superb. It was a great presentation informing us about the region, and then the wines just explained in the only way that wines can. And the Zweigelt particularly, it's really fascinating to see the different styles that can be produced from this one grape. It was a super session. Thank you very much indeed. We're very, very grateful to you all, and to all your fellow producers who make excellent wine. And we hope we'll see more of it in the UK and around the world. Thank you very much.